Friends, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk to you about some stories that we're missing. We've been going through the book Catholic Bible for Children, looking at the way in which we, as anybody who was raised Catholic and in a lot of Christian religions, where you are raised in a way that really sets you up in order to be manipulated and abused. So I've been going through the stories. We've gotten all the way to the story of Joseph. We're about to get into Joseph in Egypt, and we're going to talk about Moses after that. But before we proceed, I realized, I was thinking, I'm like, there seems to be a lot of stories we're missing when we're going through this book. And so I was curious to look back and see what are some of the stories that in the children's Bible we were glossed over. They're completely not mentioned. And either because they are too adult of stories, or maybe they thought they didn't really jive with what they're trying to teach children, which seems to be more likely, right? That actually, well, the Bible doesn't really lend itself to teaching us what Catholics think that we should be taught. So there's a lot of stories in here that go counter to what I was taught as a child, including, like I was talking about last time, we were talking about Joseph and why he was a favorite. He was a favorite because, well, one of the reasons he was a favorite is because he was Rachel's only son, and Jacob had been tricked into marrying Leah, Rachel's older sister, even though he wanted to marry Rachel. He was tricked into marrying Leah. And Leah had a couple kids. Rachel finally had a child, Joseph. And so, it's just left out. Leah's completely left out of the whole story, which is, not totally surprising. And, because of that, I was like, oh, right, like, let's look back and let's find out what other stories are missing. So I took some notes. I'm going to read to you some of the things that were missing. So we go all the way back to Abraham and Sarah, but this is before they are named that. Their first names before they were renamed Abraham and Sarah were Abram and Sarai. I think that's how you say it, Sarai. That's how I'm going to say it today. So back in the day, Abraham did some traveling. And as he was traveling, he tells everyone that Sarai is his sister, not his wife. And this is in order to, like, something about having Sarai as his wife. He's like, oh, they're going to kill me because of her. And so he lies, and Sarai is taken as a wife to the Pharaoh in Egypt. And at some point, I think, and I should have gone back and read this particular one. I'm pretty sure the Pharaoh got pretty punished by God because he took Sarai as his wife, even though he was lied to. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. They end up traveling along. Sarai comes back to Abram, and they continue on and they travel. And in their traveling, Abram is traveling with his nephew Lot. And they're like, we got too much stuff. We got too many people. We should go ahead and we should split up. So they do. So Abram goes one way, Lot goes the other way. Lot heads to Sodom. I guess on the way, maybe before he gets to Sodom, he gets captured, and Abram goes, he takes all his people and he saves them. And so Abram gets, right after that, Abram gets promised that he's going to have a son. He's going to have an heir by Sarai, which he doesn't have yet. After all of this time, Sarai has not given him an heir. And Abram's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So in the meantime, it's just promised someday, right? But in the meantime, Sarai gives Abram her slave girl, Hagar, and Abram then Hagar bears a son called Ishmael. So now Abram does have an heir, and Ishmael is born, and Sarai is, she gets super mad about Hagar and how Hagar seems like pretty uppity. It sounds like now she's all that because she gave Abram a son. And Sarai gets pissed, and it sounds like maybe she beats her up. She's very mean to her. And Hagar is ready to run away with Ishmael. She takes him, she runs, and God convinces her to stay. Later down the road, God changes their names to Abraham and Sarah. He teaches Abraham about circumcision. That's left out of the Catholic Children's Bible. I wonder why. And promises that Sarah will have a son, even though she's 90. Wow, that's amazing. So Abraham and Ishmael make sure everyone gets circumcised, right? And then 3 angels visit and tell Abraham again that Sarah's going to conceive. And that's so great. God says after that, so through these 3 angels, God is chatting with Abraham, and they say they're going to destroy Sodom, because Sodom is just an evil, horrible place. And Abraham's like, whoa, what if there's good people in Sodom? And God's like, oh, okay, if there's like 50 good people, I'll save it. And Abraham's like, well, what if there's only 45? And they negotiate down. And God's like, fine. Okay, if there's 45, I'll save Sodom. And Abraham's like, whoa. So they negotiate all the way down to 10. God's like, fine, if there's 10 good people in Sodom, I'll save Sodom. And Abraham's like, awesome, sweet. So he's watching from the hill. The 3 angels head to Sodom, and they check in. They're like, all right, we got to go find out if there's 10 good people. And so that's one of my favorites. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Bible. This is the NSRV version, whatever. It's pretty similar in most of them. So the 3 angels go down. Lot's like, hey, come on, angels, come stay in my home. And they're like, nah, we'll just stay in the square. And Lot's like, no, really, like, you should probably come to my house. I'm like, fine, okay. So they go to his house. And at night, all of the men of Sodom, both young and old, surround the house, and they call to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may know them. Lot went out the door to the men, shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. So Lot, this is funny. This is funny to me. It's horrifying. It's also funny to me because they're like, these men want to do what they want with these 3 men who are really angels. And the better choice, because this is how they feel about women at this point, the better choice is, let me give you my 2 daughters. Men, crowd that has surrounded my house, angrily demanding sex. I will give you my 2 daughters in trade. So he tries to appease them by giving them his daughters. And then the men try to break into the house. They're like, nah, we don't want those daughters. We want your 3 men. And they try to break down the door. And the angels pull Lot back inside, and they close the door, and they don't get to them. But then, of course, God's like, whoo, Lot, you better get your family. You better take your family and leave, because we don't see anything good in Sodom here. Right, angels tell Lot, take his family and go. Lot tries to get his brothers-in-law, but they're like, that's such a joke. Well, you're not going to destroy Sodom. Why would God do that? And Lot's like, well, that sucks. And so he's only able to leave with his wife and his 2 daughters. And they're told not to look back. But of course, Lot's wife looks back to see, because, I don't know, like, her home city is being destroyed by fire and brimstone. And that's kind of crazy. Even if it wasn't the place that she grew up or she loved it, that sounds pretty intense. And I'd probably want to look as well. But she wasn't supposed to look. God turns her into a pillar of salt. She's dead. Apparently she was good enough to be chosen to escape, but not good enough after she turns around and looks. Doesn't take much in the Bible to just be destroyed. Anyway, so now it's just Lot and his 2 daughters, and they run to, I think it's called Zoar, and they're like off on their own. And Lot's daughters are like, oh my gosh, it's like just us and our dad, and I don't know how else we're gonna have kids. So I guess we'd better get him drunk and get pregnant by him. And so they do that. So one night, one daughter gets him drunk and gets pregnant. And the next night, the other daughter gets him drunk and sleeps with him and gets pregnant by him. And they have 2 kids. That's a cute story we kind of we gloss over in the Bible. Just couldn't find a way to fit um drinking, rape, and incest into the picture in a nice way. So we skipped it. What else? And then yeah, so they get pregnant, cool. They form a couple of nations by those 2 kids. In the meantime, Abraham and Sarah, they journey away again. And Abraham, again, does not claim Sarah as his wife in order to save his own ass. And what's his name? I can't remember his name, but anyway, a king takes Sarah for his wife. He's like, sweet, you've got a sister. I'm going to take her for my wife. And Abraham doesn't say anything because he's like, that's the price that you pay for being my husband, Sarah. You get sold around as wives to different people. And God goes to Abimelech, is the name of the king, goes to Abimelech in his dreams. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you sleeping with this woman? And Abimelech's, well, it's she's available. She's a sister. And God's like, no, dude, that's Abraham's wife. And Abimelech is like, what? Abimelech goes to Abraham and he's like, why exactly did you tell me that this was your sister and not your wife? And Abraham was like, I was so scared you were going to kill me. Then Abimelech is like, okay, well, let me give her back to you. And for some reason, Abimelech, even though he was tricked, again, apparently trickery doesn't matter. Even though he was tricked, he's like, let me apologize for you for taking this woman to be my own wife. So let me like give you a bunch of stuff and apologize. And after he apologizes, God like cures. It sounds like what he did was because Abimelech had Sarah, God had made it so everybody's wombs were closed, so like nobody could have kids. And then when Abimelech gave Sarah back, since he hadn't slept with her, God forgave him, even though Abimelech sounds like didn't theoretically do anything wrong, but he forgives him and he heals all of the people's wombs. So now they can have kids again. I mean, okay. I mean, I don't know how many times in the Old Testament that like God, it's weird. It's like his people don't have loyalty to him. It's like God has this loyalty to a certain family line. And so Abraham does shitty thing after shitty thing, and God punishes everybody that Abraham tricks. Punishes the Pharaoh. He just seems to punish everybody that doesn't jive with Abraham, and Abraham gets away with it. Abraham is still the chosen one because he's following God, I guess. And so God seems to have great loyalty to Abraham. And poor Sarah, by the way, in this whole story, how many people has she been given away to over time? And she will back Abraham up. She backs him up and she's like, yes, that's my brother. And so she is given away as a wife several times, probably more times than what is described in the Bible, if these are true stories. Last thing, and there's more, we haven't even talked about Dinah. Dinah gets raped later. There's like all these stories. But last thing, Sarah finally, right, after all of the promises, Sarah, even though she is 90 plus, finally has a son. They name him Isaac. And she is both surprised and pleased that she is able to have a kid at this age, and sees Isaac playing with Ishmael. Although, as I was reading this, I'm like, that doesn't really make too much sense because Ishmael seems like he'd probably be like much older But I guess not, because she gets really angry. She's like, hey, Abraham, you got to kick Hagar out. You got to kick Ishmael out. Now we have our own son. We have our own heir. Hagar's a slave girl. You got to kick her out and her son. Ishmael cannot be your heir. He can't grow up here. And so Abraham's like, all right. He checks in with God. God's like, yeah, send him out. So you will have people, you'll have great nations by both of these kids, Abraham, but go ahead and kick Hagar and her baby out of your household. Abraham's like, all right, gives her some bread, sends her off, and Hagar wanders out into the middle of the desert. She's wandering. She has nowhere to go. It's her and her baby. And at some point, she's giving up. They haven't found water. They haven't found food. And she just sticks him under a bush and she looks away. She's like, I can't do it. I can't watch my kid die in front of me. And so she wanders away and she looks away and she either falls asleep or like, is so dehydrated and has like a vision, and she's talking to God and he's like, hey, Hagar, open your eyes, you're gonna survive. And this is one of those moments again, right? It's like, ooh, we are supposed to be so grateful to God. So God says, Hagar, don't worry, look, open your eyes. And Hagar opens her eyes and there's a well of water and they get water and they survive. It's one of those stories where it's like, God, why is it that God allows Hagar to be kicked out and almost dead, suffering to the point where she puts her son under a bush and walks away because he is dying, if nothing else? He's dehydrated and dying. And then God comes and says, hey, don't worry, even though I'm the one who put you in this shitty spot, right? Because I'm the one who chose Abraham and Sarah gave you to Abraham, and now Ishmael's his heir. And right, like I put you in this position. I said, yeah, go ahead and kick her out. But you should be really grateful to me that I saved you at just the last minute with a well of water. Such an abusive asshole, this God of the Old Testament. So awful. And people try to pretty it up, right? But these stories are terrible. They're terrible. They're violent. Women are unimportant. Not just unimportant, they are tossed aside. They're used. They're slaves. They're given as wives. They're used as payment. They're used to right. Abraham uses his wife to keep him alive, so he gives her away so that he won't be killed. The story after story, Rebecca and Rachel and Leah, right? Like Leah is given to Jacob, and then Rachel is supposed to like she's like earned after he works off his time. I don't know. So many stories that are just so terrible. We haven't even hit the saddest one in my mind, the story of Dinah. At least Dinah has a name, but she is unimportant. She is tossed and used. They don't call it rape, but it is definitely rape, and I'll talk about it another day. But in the meantime, this was just a little aside. I'll put a trigger warning on this one because we talked about a lot of things that are maybe a little harder to hear. And we'll get back to Joseph and Egypt next time, and where we'll look at how the Catholic Children's Bible just pretties up these awful, awful stories and teaches us how to be groomed and abused and manipulated and coerced. Great one.